Incubation and Advisory Foundation, to TIE and to India Venture and Alternative Capital Association. This is a truly remarkable first of its kind initiative, bringing together the entire startup ecosystem, from startups, from investors, from incubators to accelerators to industry leaders, with the central theme of Bharat Innovates. So this is a remarkable initiative, and my memory goes back to 16 January 2016 when the Startup India was launched. There were just a handful of startups then in India, and before we launched the startup movement, actually we made about 5 presentations to Prime Minister Mr. Modi, and every time he wanted us to do several things before the Startup India could be launched. So he wanted the fund of funds to be created. He wanted the Atal Incubation Mission to be launched, and since then we've done over 10,000 tinkering labs. But one of the key things he had in mind was that we should not encircle the startups with all these rules, regulation, procedures, and how we can simplify. So the toughest thing was to get an order issued from the Ministry of Labour that none of these labour laws, factories and inspection laws will apply to the startups of India. And only after that the Prime Minister agreed to launch the Startup India movement, and when it was launched there were only the startups who were sitting with him and who inaugurated it along with him. So since then, in the last 8 years, as has been said, we've been able to create the third largest startup ecosystem with over 112,000 startups. 112,000, from 300 to 112,000 startups. That's been the jump in 8 years. We've from about 4 to 5 incubators to over 400 plus incubators, to over about 115 plus unicorns, with a combined valuation of over $350 billion. That's been the startup story of the last 8 years. So we've had almost about a 20x increase in total funding. We've had almost a 12x increase in the number of investors. We've had almost about a 8x increase in the number of incubators since then. And to my mind, this is a remarkable story, and startups have actually created close to over 1 million plus jobs, but they've created over 10 million indirect jobs, and they've contributed to a gig economy of over about 4 million individuals. That has been the remarkable story. So it's a story of growth with a lot of job creation. So it's a story of completely a quantum jump, a meteoric rise, which has been possible because of ease of doing business, because the government people like Mr. R.K. Singh, Mr. Shivram Krishnan, they've handled, and he told you the story of how from 10,000 crores it's led to about 56,000 crores of money flowing in. We've been able to, the government officers like Mr. R.K. Singh have been able to cut through the regulatory cholesterol and simplified regulations and procedures. So my view is that these startups, if you look at this in many, many areas, India created the digital identity. But between 2015 to 2017, we opened up 550 million bank accounts. 55% of the bank accounts were opened in India. Every second bank account was opened in India. This has not happened anywhere else in the world. And then we seeded them with Aadhaar. We seeded them with the mobile number. And today we do 46% of the real-time fast payments in the world. Last year we've done close to 128 billion real-time transactions in the world. 128 billion. China was next with just 26 billion real-time fast payments. So the difference between India and China is 128 and 26. That is the real fast payment story of India. But then, from fast payment, you've had a number of looking at the history of fast payment, you've had a number of startups. If you look at Lending Card, Pine Lab, all them, they started giving credit on the payment history. And then you had a number of startups. Look at Zerodha, Grow, Upstock, all of them started taking wealth creation to Tier 2, Tier 3 cities and rural areas. They control over 30% of the stock market from Tier 2, Tier 3 rural areas. These are all young startups who all become unicorn. And then you had a number of young startups like GoDigit, Acco, who started taking insurance to the rural areas, Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. They give, so we do a fast payment in 30 seconds. We do wealth creation, credit in 1 minute. We do stock market in 30-second transaction. We do, when I was growing up, life insurance policy with paperwork used to take me 6 months of trying to establish identity, 6 months. Today we give an insurance policy in less than a minute on the go, on the mobile. All this is a function of young startups disrupting the system and aggressively pushing things. And therefore my belief is that these startups are all national assets. They are all national assets. And that's been the big story of India. My challenge really is that from number 3, we are number 3 in the world. The Prime Minister's vision, and he talked about it just in his last speech, he's thinking big about startups. So the challenge for India is, how do we make India the number 1 nation of startups in the world in the next 5 years? That is the challenge. The challenge is, how do you make it number 1 in the world in the next 5 years? And I was actually at Stanford. I was lecturing there, and I really saw the whole ecosystem in a very big